everybody. My name is Dave Jackson, and welcome back to Tales from the Backlog, where each week I'm joined by a guest to deep dive a game from our backlogs. Today's game is Psychonauts, but before we get into Psychonauts, a few quick things. If this is your first time here, first of all, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate you checking out a new show. Here's how spoilers are going to work today. We are not going to spoil the story of Psychonauts for quite some time. You can check down in the timestamps in the show notes for when the spoilers begin, but we'll also warn you when we're coming up on that point. So in case you don't want to be spoiled, you're safe for a while. And if you enjoy the show, as always, please consider supporting however you can. You can do that monetarily at patreon.com/realdavejackson. You can also do it in other ways, like leaving ratings and reviews on the podcast apps, leaving comments and likes on YouTube, telling a friend, sharing it wherever you share podcasts, stuff like that. It's much appreciated. So, with that out of the way, I am not here alone today. I have a guest with me, as always, a first-time guest on this episode of the show. My guest is one of the hosts of My Life in Gaming on YouTube and a co-founder of the Backloggery and a Psy-Power master. Welcome to the show, Try.
Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for finally getting me to actually pull this game off my shelf and play through the whole thing. You know, I always love making backlog progress.
There we go. Yeah, we have some backlog synergy between us and the projects that we do, and a little bit of deja vu with that comment about getting you to play it. I'm always glad when people come on the show and say, I'm glad that you finally gave me a reason to play this stuff. I mean, I love doing it for myself too. It's part of the reason I do the show. But I'm always glad when people come on here and say, hey, that thing might have just floundered on my shelf forever if you hadn't given me the invite. So thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
Today, we are going to be talking about Psychonauts. As I said, Psychonauts is a 3D platformer developed by DoubleFine Productions and published by Majesco for PC, Xbox, and PS2 in 2005. Psychonauts was directed by Tim Schafer, which is a name that's going to come up more throughout the rest of the show, and we'll also have more credits as we get into different aspects of Psychonauts here. So, elevator pitch time. What is Psychonauts? I say Psychonauts is all of those psychological horror concepts turned into a Saturday morning cartoon. Try, what would you say?
I'd say it's like it's a 3D platformer that's like one of those LucasArts adventure games that you love that you probably wish also played like those LucasArts adventure games rather than a platformer.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to fully join you there, but we'll dig into that for sure later on. And we'll also talk about the history of this company and the creatives with those old adventure games as we go on, for sure. Let's see, Psychonauts, 10 hours to beat for me. I played this on PC. How about you? Where did you play this?
I played the original Xbox version on Xbox Series X through backwards compatibility. And yeah, I think it was like 11 and a half hours for me. So not an overly arduous game to get through for sure in terms of time commitment.
Right, for sure. Always appreciated, especially when we have games in like that 5 to 15 hour range, which is especially helpful if someone messages you on Discord and asks if you want to come on a podcast to say, oh, by the way, it's not 70 hours long.
Yeah, but then I, made myself play Psychonauts 2 immediately after. So yeah. that's on me though, not you.
That's true. And we chatted a little bit. It doesn't sound like playing Psychonauts 2 was the worst thing in the world to quote make yourself do. So.
Oh no. It was a wonderful experience.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe later on I'll try and think about like what I hope from Psychonauts 2, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're skipping over the game of the day here, which is Psychonauts 1. So we always start with our histories with Psychonauts, with the game of the day, why we wanted to play this. And so I floated this to you because I've heard you talk in the past about how you like 3D platformers and just wondered if this was one you might be interested in. But you mentioned before that you had a little bit of history with this game. You tried it a little bit, stuff like that. So what's your history with Psychonauts?
Yeah, so the funny thing, It was 2006 when I first played it. I throughout my life, I've had, occasional episodes of, being a bit of a hypochondriac where I'm just like convinced that I might have some horrible disease. Mm-hmm. And then I go to the doctor and they tell me, no, you're fine. And then I feel fine. And the first time that ever happened, it was 2006. And I distinctly remember after, leaving that doctor's visit, I stopped at GameStop, or it may have still been EB Games at the time. I'm not sure. And I was just browsing for something to buy, and I got Psychonauts for the PS2. And it's kind of funny. I tell that story because I feel like kind of just getting over what was, essentially like, a brain problem, like a psychological sort of problem. You would almost think that Psychonauts would be like kind of the perfect game for helping you maybe work through some of those feelings, right? Like it's about like organizing like just these sort of stray thoughts in your brain and taking control of them, right? But for some reason, no, it did not really resonate with me at the time, whether it was because I just wasn't liking how the platforming felt, or I didn't really like the character designs. Just something about it, the vibes weren't vibing with me. But to be fair, also, I don't have that PS2 copy anymore, so I can't really easily go back and reference, but I have heard that the PS2 version is considered quite poor in comparison to the Xbox version. So I don't know if maybe some of the technical issues were also part of the problem, but it's always been a game that I felt I never gave the time to that it deserved. So I later got an Xbox copy and intended to play it, but never did until you asked me to join you on this podcast. So mission accomplished. I finally played through Psychonauts.
There we go. Yeah. All of us go into the game store with the best of intentions to play the things that we buy 100%. So unlike you, I guess, I don't, do you remember, like, how did you hear about this in the first place? Because I had an Xbox back then. I played it a lot. I liked games like this, but I just straight up never heard of this when it came out.
Yeah, I'm sure I read about on like IGN or something back in the day. And I remember people seemed to like it. So I'm sure that's why I was interested in trying it out. But I was not particularly familiar with like LucasArts adventure games at the time, stuff like that. So I didn't really know anything about its history or anything. And to be honest, I didn't play like a lot of 3D platformers like on PS2 at the time. I played some, but I skipped a lot of those like PS2 series because, like, I don't know, like for some reason GameCube was my platformer system and PS2 was like other games. I don't know. So
fair enough. I mean, the GameCube was definitely my preferred platform for sure. Maybe around 2005 it would have started to switch over to Xbox, but yeah, I'm similar boat there for sure. But like I said, I'd never heard of Psychonauts until, I don't know, maybe 5 years ago, something like that, when I started to basically join more Discord servers, other online, places to talk about games more often with people. And this is a game that, like, every now and then you'll meet someone who, like, Psychonauts is their favorite game of all time. And
sure, yeah.
Anytime like a game like kind of repeatedly gets that, even if it's, a little infrequent, you're like, wow, I've met like 5 people now who they say this is their favorite game of all time. There must be something here. So I kind of, thought about it. I've also heard lots of criticism out there about what it's like to actually play the game. So that kind of put me off of it for a while, until 2 things this year made me finally give it a try. The first one was our mutual friends over at the Retro Hangover podcast invited me to come on their show for an episode about Psychonauts. So that was the reason I played it in the first place, was to go chat with them. And if anyone is here and you want to hear me talk about Psychonauts with different people, you could do that. It's a great episode over on Retro Hangover. Different conversation from what we're going to have on this episode here today. And then I put this in a Patreon poll to see if my patrons, my show patrons, would want to hear me do an episode. And they did. It won the poll. So that's why it's on the show, really, is because I was invited for Retro Hangover, and then my patrons said, we want it on this show too. So here we are, Psychonauts. And to do our kind of top level thoughts about Psychonauts here, basically the criticisms that I'd heard about this game not being the most fun 3D platformer to play played out that way for me. I did not like playing this game, but everything other than the act of playing it as a platformer, mostly, I really liked. So like everything else, the story is really fun. Love the characters. Love the way the game looks. Love the music. Just pretty consistently irritating to actually play the game, do the levels, make the jumps, grab the ledges and stuff like that. Fight the bosses. Pretty irritating in my experience. There's a lot of little design decisions that I think are weird and don't make a lot of sense. Then going back and later learning about the history of the people who made the game and how they came from adventure games started to like contextualize some of those decisions for me a little bit. So overall, I like Psychonauts. I'm oddly fond of it. But if you had caught me at any random moment when I was playing it, I might have been like, man, this kind of sucks. So it's a weird game to like have some space between playing it and now recording and like think back on the things that are really good versus the in the moment experience, you know. That's kind of where I'm at here to start before we properly dive in. Where are you coming from here?
Yeah, my thoughts are fairly similar. You know, I didn't think it was necessarily like excruciatingly difficult or anything, but it rarely feels super good to control. And there's a lot of just visual design issues, I think, in terms of like, you know, the figments that you collect, like the way they phase in and out, and they're really hard to like tell, like, where are they in 3D space to actually get them. A lot of, you know, equipping your items in levels to do certain tasks and your abilities like can be a little bit cumbersome. Just lots of little things that kind of add up to just a subpar feel to playing the game. Now I say all that, and we'll probably get to it later in the spoiler section, but like a part of the game near the end that was like actually pretty hardcore platforming, I actually really loved. Like, I was surprised how much I liked that part of the game.
Okay.
You know what I'm talking about, I guess.
There's two possibilities. One of them, I would be like, one of them would get that reaction. Then the other one that just popped into my head, I kind of understand more. We'll get there for sure. There's a tease for everybody who's listening. Yeah,
exactly. So yeah, I'm like of two minds. Like sometimes I loved the platforming, and sometimes a little jank is okay because jank can also be freedom, right? And sometimes you can do unexpected things, jump to unexpected places, and that can be fun as well. But there's also a lot of really strange stuff, like in terms of how you collect items, how you power up. Like you have to collect all these things, and then you have to buy a thing to put these things in that then levels you up. And it's like, there's so many, why are all those steps there? And then there's also like, you can also get those same things by, you know, buying this vacuum, and you know, then you have to put them into this machine, but then there's these other things you collect and have to put them into this machine. And it's like so many unnecessary steps to do some very basic stuff. But funny enough, I do feel that the game is at its best, and we can't really talk about this too much until we get to the spoiler section. It's at its best, I think, when it does lean into those kind of adventure game sensibilities where you are kind of using items and manipulating the scene in unexpected ways. that are less platformery. I mean, the actual act of doing it can still be a little clunky because of the mechanics, but the ideas and the writing, I mean, everything is so charming. But yeah, that's kind of my opening thoughts, I guess.
Yeah, I think that what you said there at the very end is a perfect way to like sum up, I think, the way both of us generally feel about Psychonauts, which is I think a lot of us play video games because we love seeing creative ideas come to life in the games that we play. And I can't think of very many games that have many more creative ideas than Psychonauts.
Oh yeah. And the voice acting is just nailed so hard, you know. I mean, everything about the writing and presentation on that side is great.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a lot to dig into, and you just mentioned writing. We're going to pick that up after this music break. We're going to listen to a bit of music from Psychonauts, and then when we come back, we're going to set up the story. Psychonauts was written primarily by two people, Tim Schafer, again, and Eric Wolpaw. And in the game, you play as a kid named Rasputin. Everyone calls him Raz, though, and so will I throughout the rest of the episode. You mentioned voice acting before that music break. Raz is voiced by Richard Stephen Horvitz, which is a name that should be probably pretty important to a lot of people of a certain age. I think on Retro Hangover, Shane mentioned Invader Zim as a voice credit for them. I never watched that show. This voice did not, I didn't recognize it, but I know a lot of people will from that name and the voice. So there we go. Richard Stephen Horvitz. Raz is a young boy with psychic powers who runs away from a circus to try to become a psychonaut. Psychonauts are spies that have psychic abilities who can kind of enter the mind and psyche of other people to help them or harm them. I'm not sure what we're going to do in there. It kind of depends on the mission, I suppose. But in this game, you're going to go into the psyche of others and help them out. And Raz ran away from home. So he's on a kind of like a timer. He has to like get all the Psychonauts training time in that he can before the camp counselors send him back home, like on Monday or something, when they can come pick him up or something. I don't remember exactly, but it's a short time that he's there. So through the kind of psychic powers, Raz goes around, helps people overcome their fears or their traumatic memories by going inside of their mind and doing action platformer adventure game type stuff. The first level, the tutorial, is this supposed war hero, the sergeant of the camp. It's a summer camp, but it's also like a government army training facility.
Right. Yeah. It very much has like summer camp vibes, though, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And the first level is you go into the Sergeant Oleander's mind, where you see the truth that he's not actually a war hero, and you can, throughout the game, you'll go in there and see what else is really going on in his head. So that's the basic kind of like story premise, is going into different people's psyches, seeing what's in there, seeing what's troubling them, seeing the truth of their past and things like that. I thought this was a really, really interesting story premise, and it kind of like both in story and in gameplay sets up unlimited potential for cool stuff that you're going to see and do.
Absolutely. And, obviously that's a ripe concept for iterating upon in a sequel. So, there was so many ideas I'm sure they had that they couldn't do at the time, and it's a relatively narrow scope in terms of the physical environment that it takes place in. But that's like kind of what's so fun about the Psychonauts concept, is you've got like real world exploration, but also like mental exploration. And, you've got the start of a good idea with kind of, blending those two kinds of environments. And then I think they really capitalized on that even further in a very positive way in the sequel.
Nice. Yeah. You have the camp. That's the main place where the game, happens, is in the camp and in kind of the surrounding area. But the big wow moments, most of them are going to happen inside of the psyches. You'll have, right. One camp counselor's mind is like a dance club. There's one that, like, the sergeant's is kind of like a war scenario. You have one that's this suburban neighborhood with this like non-Euclidean geometry and like going all over the place. You've got others that are built out of like combinations of different characters, like some weird stuff that happens on later
right.
on. Very, very cool stuff. Now, I have a question for you, because I don't know about you, maybe when you first heard it, or maybe you played the game before you heard too much about the concept. I thought with the concept that you're going into people's minds and you're I don't want to say fixing their traumas, but you're helping them with them, or you're helping them overcome fears or unlocking repressed memories and stuff. I thought this was going to be like a dark story, like that's why I said the psychological horror concept. This is Silent Hill right here. It's not. It's a cartoony thing. There's some like dark and tragic stuff that happens, or stuff that happened in their past, I'll say. In the game story, there's some like, if you think too hard about it, it's pretty gross and fucked up, but like, it's never that way in the presentation of the game or the writing. It's not a game that I think is going to make you cry or scare you or something like that. It's very cartoony. That's the vibe here, is like that. Like I said, that Saturday morning cartoon. Was that a surprise for you too?
No, not necessarily. That original time I briefly played the PS2 version, kind of set some expectations. And then in the many years between then and now, I have become much more familiar with like the LucasArts adventures. I've played the Monkey Island games. I've played Grim Fandango, stuff like that, Maniac Mansion. So I've become more familiar with the tone and sort of general scenario structure that those games tend to have. And, I know Tim Schafer is generally kind of more of a comedic writer. So I was well aware of all these things. And I think if you know that about Tim Schafer's prior work, I think you will find that the tone of Psychonauts is like spot on what you would imagine, one of those former LucasArts adventure writers creating in a more like 3D platformer kind of environment.
Yeah, for sure. Knowing or learning a little bit later on about the history of Tim Schafer and where I'm sure other creatives at Double Fine came from, like really solidified, like, oh, that's why this is it's a comedy, basically. It's a cartoony comedy.
Yeah. But I would say it's certainly like the writing is of like a higher level than your typical like, toy tie-in Saturday morning cartoon, right?
True.
Like, it's definitely, there's emotional weight to it.
For sure. Like I said, you do find some pretty hairy stuff that some of the counselors have been through. And there's a pretty good story with Raz and his family and stuff like that too. It's just like when I first heard the concept, I was like, oh, we're going in like the dark corners of people's psyches and it's going to be a sad game and stuff like that. And it's not. It's a funny game. And again, that adventure game kind of DNA is a big part of that too. Also part of it, like along those lines, the writing is that way, but like the visuals, the music is all, and the voice acting too is all that way too. So what did you think of the visual aesthetic in Psychonauts?
I hate it. Don't get me wrong. I like stylization, but like literally everyone except like Sasha looks like they are the result of like a teleportation experiment gone awry. Like they are these extremely strange, grotesque shapes, like long necks and oddly shaped heads. Like I've never been a fan of like the whole like the Hey Arnold like football head.
The football head, yeah.
Yeah, I don't like that. The whole like the very like Nickelodeon like the gross out kind of character designs, like your Ed and Eddies and stuff like that, Ren and Stimpy type bizarre proportions. I like stylization, but I'm not a huge fan of that like 90s American cartoon stylization. The other aspect to it too, I think, is the texturing, because they kind of have this like gradient sort of design with how the skin is textured, where like kind of when you get toward the extremities, like the nose and under the eyes and the ears, like they sort of make it gradiate it to be a different color that just kind of makes them look sick, like, you know, their nose is stopped, just like our nose is red, but it could be another weird color, like when we're sick or something there. Or, you know, you've got characters like Bobby Zilch, who I think is like, his gums are green, you know, they're very prominent gums with, you know, teeth dangling from them. They're just gross and unpleasant to look at. And, you know, I don't know if the talent behind Double Fine, because I do believe this was their first game. I don't know if they were really ready to realize like a 3D environment like that and create all these I mean, the environments are okay, but it's really the character models. Like, I understand why they went with a stylized approach, but I don't like how the characters look. I will say that I warmed up to the characters much more playing the sequel. I think just the further skill that they developed as artists, and of course the higher level of technology that they had to render them in, made them look much more appealing. I think the new characters look much less grotesque in Psychonauts 2. So yeah, I warmed up to it over time, but I do think they didn't have quite enough restraint with just the strange, wild shapes that the characters are made with. I did hear the game referred to as like retro future at one point as well, which like I could see that like with some sort of strange, funky, like kind of 60s kinds of shapes and color schemes, which I do like. Like I like some of those ideas, but I think they just like put too much of that those weird shapes into the characters. They make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, you're not the first person I've talked to that said exactly that. So I had written down even that, I mean, it's super stylized in that kind of like gross cartoon kind of look, like you said, and it's just going to be, your mileage is going to vary depending on how you find that. I thought it was cute, not cute. I mean, everyone's ugly as hell in this game, but it was charming. I enjoyed the way that they looked, and maybe it is because, like you mentioned, Hey Arnold, that's one of my favorite cartoons of all time. I love that show so much. And it might just be, you know, there's like multiple characters that have heads shaped like Hey Arnold in this game. So everyone's like, there's another thing that was pointed out. I think it was Watch Out for Fireballs pointed this out. There's like no rules of symmetry with characters' faces. Like eyes will be on different levels at their head, and like people have weird shit on one side of their head and stuff like that. Like all that stuff, it combines to be a little bit off-putting. I mean,
like you've got Dogen, who is like at the very beginning of the
torso.
game,
he's like shoulders directly into legs, you know?
Shoulders directly into legs, basically. Yeah, like right at the beginning of the game, you like see him like going up the stairs into a cabin, and the animation is very strange. It's like I'm surprised that the animators like didn't raise their hand and be like, that character design is going to cause problems for us. Can we think about this?
Yeah, 100%. But that's one of the cool things about the way that everyone looks, I think, is that there's a lot of kids in the camp. There's a handful of counselors and stuff like that. And I think that like if you play this game and you pay attention, you try to remember some names, you're never going to forget how people look. So if someone says like, go talk to Sasha, go talk to Mila, go talk to Dogen, whatever, you're not going to mistake them in a crowd of other characters. Like everyone looks really distinct. So it's just going to be up to you on like how you feel about the aesthetic of the characters, because they are stylized to the point where it's divisive, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
One thing I think is a home run, though, as far as visuals, is the way that the levels look. So especially the ones when you go into people's heads. Like I'm thinking of, there is a Matador level, like a Running of the Bulls type level.
Yeah.
That's like this really striking, like black backgrounds with like vivid neon stuff everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
The Milkman level, that's the one that's in the suburbs where the streets kind of bend and twist up into the sky and stuff like that. The visual design of the levels, even if you don't get down with the characters, I feel pretty safe in saying the levels look awesome and super creative.
I'm with you there. Yes.
Also, you mentioned the figments. I think those are cool looking. It's like if you put a gun to my head and said, "Hey, Dave, jump and grab that figment on the first try," I don't think I could do it, but I like the way that they look.
Yeah. The figments are like these, they're like hand drawn, but like, also kind of neon colored, like you mentioned in the Matador level. But they're like in every mental level. And yeah, they're just like various elements that represent, memories and thoughts and fears that these characters have. They improved their representation much more in the sequel, where they don't like kind of fade out. It's much easier to like see like where they are in 3D space and actually like collect them without, missing your jump and stuff like that. So
that's good, because you need to collect them.
Yes.
Yeah. They're cool. They're little, it's just like they must have told the artists like, hey, this is a level where you're in the mind of a supposed war hero. Draw us 35 things that you could collect that could be, related to memories or thoughts of a war hero. And so in that you'll have little outline drawings of tanks and army men and stuff like that. And they're just very cool. Like, I didn't always do this, but every time I stopped and like looked at a figment closely and was like, what actually is that they're drawing here? It's cool. And it's something I think that if you were so inclined, if you were a super lore hound about Psychonauts, you could like write down what all the figments are and like really piece together more of this person as a character and their experiences and stuff like that. So they tie into the story, but they're just little cool looking things to collect, as this game has a shitload of things to collect, so you might as well make them look cool if they're not going to be easy to collect necessarily. The music in Psychonauts was done by Peter McConnell, and I had written down, this reminded me of like 90s platformers, like Rare platformers and stuff like that. Pretty diverse soundtrack, and I looked up Peter McConnell's credits. There's some Monkey Island games, Sly Cooper. So there is a history with probably both of the main gameplay inspirations for Psychonauts, that adventure game side, the 3D platformer side. I thought the music was great.
Yeah, it didn't make like a huge impression in terms of like, I'm thinking right now, I'm like, I can't remember like a specific track, but it definitely fits the game. And I noticed that he also composed the sequel as well, which that the music in that one did make a more of a firm impression on my memory, at least thus far. I finished it a few weeks ago, but like that almost had I don't know. Maybe this comparison makes sense to you for the first game as well, but certain pieces like almost gave me this like, old school summer blockbuster vibe. Like, I was about to go on like some, grand, Spielbergian adventure. More so in the second game, I would say, especially with like some of the, some of the hub area themes in that one. Yeah. For whatever reason, the first game though, the music didn't make as strong of an impression. It was certainly good, but just like not something I'm like, oh man, I gotta go get the soundtrack.
Yeah, it's it's not one that I think you're gonna listen to and be like, oh, this is like a really, I don't know, like the most cohesive soundtrack. But since you're going into different people's minds and they all have very different like concepts for the level that they made out of this person's mind, the music always fits that concept. So it's like we're going into this level where you, Raz, are like a kaiju stomping through this town, and the soundtrack in that level is like a Godzilla soundtrack, and it's cool.
Right.
There's the last level, it's called the Meat Circus, and so it has this like really upbeat circus inspired track that's like
that track
great.
that track did stay in my mind a bit.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah, and then the summer camp is like this, this dusty, it's like this dusty place, and it has this like real low key like acoustic guitar kind of Western feel to it.
A little twangy.
Yeah, some twang for sure. So I like the music a lot in here. And again, it's all pretty fun. So like it plays into the fact that, again, we're going through these levels. If you choose to play it this way, Raz can destroy that town when you're as a kaiju in that level. But it's never anything but comedy. So the soundtrack is like an upbeat, fun soundtrack to fit that. The last part that I had to mention about like the presentation side of things is I want to go back to the voice acting, because I don't know that I've played a game recently that sounded like the voice actors were having as much fun as I think they were having recording for Psychonauts. That sound right to you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was reading after I beat the game that they actually originally tried to get real kids to voice the kids, and it just wasn't working out,
Right.
They just couldn't have the right cadence and comedic timing and stuff, right?
Sure.
But I think they nailed it. I mean, they just I've always found that the writing from some of those LucasArts adventure games translates so well to spoken dialogue. Like I think I'm drawing a blank on his name. Isn't it Ron something? The main guy behind Monkey Island. Like
Ron Gilbert. Yeah.
Ron Gilbert. Yes. I know he was like more Monkey Island than Tim Schafer, but I was always like so amazed at how those original 2 Monkey Island games were not written for voice acting. And then when the special editions came out, they brought in the voice actors from like the 3rd and 4th game, and the dialogue, they didn't change the writing one bit, but you wouldn't think that it would work so well for spoken dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
If it had never been written for that.
Right.
So I just think that really speaks to the talent of those LucasArts writers. And I think that's why the voice acting works so well in this game. I mean, I would say the voice acting is in the absolute top tier of the entire generation that this game is from. I mean, it was still very much an era of hit and miss writing quality and voice acting quality. Mm-hmm. And that is one area you can't fault this game for one bit. I mean, the voice acting makes you love the characters, even if you hate how they look.
Yeah, that's true for sure. It's a really good point, because I play a lot of like very story heavy games. And I think in a lot of those games, and I don't necessarily mean this as a criticism, but like they're written in a way to quote, have good writing. And sometimes the result is that characters say stuff that no normal person would ever say out loud to another person. Whereas, again, it's not like a bad thing. It's like people from Disco Elysium don't talk like real people. They talk like Disco Elysium characters. Psychonauts characters, again, it's like super cartoony and weird, but it is definitely written with the idea that a voice actor is going to do this line and it's going to be funny and it's going to be charming when they say it. You definitely get that feeling. So I'm with you there. Everyone just sounds like they're having the most fun with these characters, because it feels very clear to me that they told the voice actors, this is cartoony as hell. Just like lean into it, get weird, get funny, get loud with a lot of the characters, especially you mentioned Dogen, I took a look through the credits and again, Richard Steven Horvitz is Invader Zim. I looked that up. So there's one cartoon, but also Tara Strong has a couple of voice roles in the game. Powerpuff Girls, Fairly Odd Parents. Steve Bloom has a couple of roles in the game. as the G-men in the Milkmen level, most notably for me at least. So those are some big names from the world of cartoons and anime. And so bringing in, I might be reading too much into this, but bringing in voice actors that are more known for cartoons and anime than video game voice acting probably gives this game more of that cartoony feel. And not to say that, video game voice actors couldn't have voiced characters in here, but you get what I'm saying. Like,
Absolutely.
the feeling and the comedy and the kind of just like over the topness of these characters. It's really, really comes from the writing, but the voice acting is super strong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So back, we went off on the side thing to talk about like the tone that this game sets and how cartoony and over the top and funny it is. And then we kind of like loop it back to the story. And with a big break in the middle there, what did you think of like the general plot? Did you think it was fun to follow along with as you went?
Yeah, I mean, they actually kind of reveal the twist a little earlier than
it is early, yeah.
would have expected. And, without spoiling anything, you kind of go into this area, like, I don't know, maybe 2/3 or maybe even less than that into the game that like is like where you start to work toward the end of the game. You go to this location that is extremely unlike where you started the game at. And
yeah,
at first that took me a little bit to warm up to. You talked about the mind that takes the form of this old school American neighborhood, but it's all twisted. That's like the first level of this kind of very different, like the real world environment is like an unexpected location that wasn't really teased. So that kind of felt like a little bit out of nowhere, but I think the sheer quality of that neighborhood level, which I think you could make a strong argument is the best level in the game.
Yeah, I'd hear it.
That made me warm up to this kind of new direction that the story was taking, where you kind of think you're going to be in this, camp with kids that are Raz's age, for the whole game. And then it goes to it goes to another place that's out of left field, and you are interacting with an extremely different cast of characters from what came before. So it feels like a weird shift in tone, but overall, yeah, I mean, I think the story was very fun to follow. And with the whole mind exploration setup, it's also very episodic, it would be a good fit for, a cartoon TV show, where you go to a different mind per episode. So, I think overall, the story comes together, but it's mostly just the writing and the delivery of the writing through the acting that is the most enjoyable, more so than the overarching story. I think the individual episodic stories are perhaps more interesting than the overarching story.
Yeah. And honestly, like a lot of those episodic stories to me are kind of interesting to just like think about and just kind of take in all the different aspects of the way the story is told, whether it's, a character talking to you or environmental design or the design of the boss fight in a character's level or, what the figments look like and stuff like that. The combination of all of that is pretty interesting, even if they very clearly choose, to me, to keep it on that level of like a kid's show, maybe like a young adult level, they never go as deep and dark as I feel like they could. It's just a storytelling choice, because I think if you do go to those places, you lose the comedy side of things and you start to really get into people's shit. That's not really where this story goes. And then that big overarching story is just a big, cartoon story with an antagonist who's cackling and extremely evil and stuff like that. And it maintains that tone that way. But I was always interested, whether it was to see what's the next character's deal as far as, their character, but it was more so to see like, what's their level going to be like? What creative ideas are they going to explore with this person's background as it relates to gameplay, more often than I thought, like, oh, this next character has a history in the theater. I bet the story in the theater is going to be great. Like, I didn't really get that from Psychonauts. It was more just, I get in the theater, the level design is super creative and the boss fight is interesting. And I actually hate that theater level, but like, it's a good example of like all the different aspects that go into how they're going to like tell the full package of the story. Like, I didn't think that any one aspect of storytelling in Psychonauts was great, but combine everything together and it's super memorable. It's fun to go through. It was just clear to me that, like I said earlier, this could be a horror game in someone else's hands, but in DoubleFine's hands, it's a comedy, and it never goes too deep into the story. I don't know if the sequel does, but this one doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, the sequel definitely, I think, has a lot more twists and turns and I think consequences from your actions of, it gets into like, is it right to do some of these things in people's minds and stuff like that. So, it actually, kind of, it does in a lot of ways, like kind of revolve around maybe like the absolute worst thing that someone could have inside of them, in some cases. So it goes maybe a little bit harder. And I think they probably felt that they could, because it was, I'm pretty positive it was crowdfunded, to some extent. And they knew that this was a game. Well, I know it was because there was a super long segment for it in the credits. But I think they also knew like this is a game for the fans, and they're older than they were when the game first came out. So they know that they can kind of go into maybe a little bit darker, deeper stuff. Although it still has a very fun, whimsical, like I said, almost like kind of Steven Spielbergian sort of vibe to the adventure in some cases, but then it leans into some deeper fears, I guess.
Gotcha. So it does sound like they go a little bit deeper in the second one than in the first one here. Whereas the first one, I think that stuff is probably there, but it's on us. Like if we really wanted to be like, what's going on in Mila's level that like contributes to telling the story of who she is and what's happened in her past, like we could do that and we could pull some stuff and some interpretations and stuff like that. But the game will never make you sit with that, really. Like the game will never.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't. The game itself doesn't fully go there and take you there with it. But if you want to dig in, we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think they may have wasted a little bit of the potential by making kind of spreading the major tutorial levels out over a pretty long stretch of the game.
Yeah.
Because, like by the time you get to it's spelled Mila, but they pronounce it Mia. They kind of make a joke about that in the second game, actually. Her level, like you feel like you've been playing the game for a pretty good while by the time you get there, but that's where you learn the levitation ability, which is extremely key and core to the gameplay, I think.
Yeah.
And her level, like you say, like story wise, it's not very deep. She's, very much this like, free spirit, 60s party gal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what her level is. Like, it's for the most part, like, pretty surface level. Like, there's nothing like too deep and dark inside her mind. And if you get a little bit more of that, like in Sasha's level, where he's trying to have this like very organized mind, but it gets
like
a little bit. Yeah, I love the cube, but it gets a little bit out of control when you're in there. But still, like I think the fact that they were really kind of using those early mind levels for tutorials kind of dampened the story impact until you really get to close to like the halfway point in the game, which is something I think the sequel does much better, because they give you like the really essential abilities like super early on, and you're getting into much deeper stuff by the second mind that you go into.
Yeah, the ones that you mentioned there, Mila's level and Sasha's level, those are good examples of what I mean, where it's like the game will present you these things, and both of them have their inner psyche. Unlike some of the characters you meet later, both of them have their psyches like very under control, but it's pretty like you can see where the shit is. And in Sasha's level, like Raz messes around and lets a bunch of stuff out, and it becomes more chaotic. Yeah. But you can read into stuff like that. Like there is some stuff that Mila has been through, some really terrible stuff. It's just very sectioned away. And you can like read into that as how she is as a character. But the game will never make you read into that. It's all on you.
I mean, really those, the safes that you unlock in each level.
Yeah.
Usually there's 2 of them, I think, in each level, and they're kind of hidden. Although, if you do some basic searching, you'll most likely find both of them.
Yeah.
And while the level itself is a very stylized version of their mind that, you might think like, oh, how did their mind get to be this type of environment? But the contents of the safe are like little comic books that I would say kind of tell the truth of what happened to them. Right. The comic books are like the canon, the ground truth of their history and maybe how they ended up being the way that they are. Yeah. Whereas the level is kind of an abstraction of what, where their mind went from there.
Right. Kind of on the surface, Mila's level is a dance party because that's the way she lives her life day to day. So, but you can look in the safe and see kind of the backstory that maybe she's hiding away. And there's even something else I'll bring up in the spoiler section that lends a bit more character to her, but it's on you to even find it in the first place as the player.
And maybe I didn't find it because I was saying it's like, possible. There's nothing crazy that happens in Mila's level. But
okay, I'll bring that up later to see if you did.
I'm curious to hear more. Maybe I just forgot.
You brought up another thing. So you mentioning the safes made me remember the other kind of collectible that you can find in the levels, which is quote, emotional baggage. So there are these bags, literal duffel bags, purses, stuff like that. And then you have to find tags. And you put the tag with the bag, and nothing happens when you put them together. I was really hoping that you get a little shot of storytelling when you put those together, but it's just a collectible.
It's just another collectible. Yeah. It does contribute, I think, to your overall points toward a level, maybe?
I don't think it doesn't contribute to the points the way Figments do, but it is like if you're going for 100%, you have to get all those things. You need to do it.
Yeah, these are, I would say, like the most, you mentioned that 90s rare sound. Not only are the aesthetics of these emotional bags with their like eyeballs and mouths like extremely 90s rare, but also the little jingle that they play when you actually clip the tag on the bag is like, if you told me Grant Kirkhope composed that, I would have believed you, because it sounds exactly like Banjo-Kazooie or
It's a
Donkey
very
Kong
good
64. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. So as far as story goes, like it's a fun thing to go through. I think that there's like areas that I feel like they could have been a way to tell little stories that they didn't really do. And then you get to a point where like, I think people who love this game and want to play through it multiple times and stuff like that can really read between the lines and like come up with like much fuller pictures of who these characters are and what they've been through than probably you and I, after playing the game one time, will.
Sure.
Because it's the game wants you to go on this like comedic story with Raz and with everybody else. And there is stuff, but we're not always getting it. And the game is not always forcing you to sit and reckon with all of that. It's just not that kind of game.
I'm sure back in the day there was, forums full of fan theories.
Yeah. Yep. Hopefully those forums still exist. You go digging around. I guess that's YouTube essay job now, but maybe they still exist. So we've kind of broached the subject of things to collect and how to play the game and stuff like that. So I want to take this chance to take another music break. We'll have people listen to a bit more of it. And when we come back, we'll talk about what it's like to play Psychonauts. Psychonauts, the main mode of gameplay is always 3D platforming, and there is a bit of combat involved too. So you're platforming your basic moves. You got your jump, double jump. You have a few powers, like you can get on this ball that will bounce you high up in the air, and then you use the same power to glide. You can mantle up stuff. You can swing on trapeze bars. That's Raz's circus background. And a lot of the levels are built as obstacle courses more than, quote, real spaces to explore. And you're in people's minds, so it makes sense to just kind of have fun with the design of things. So up until this point, we've really praised a lot about Psychonauts with kind of the story, the characters, the presentation, most of the presentation in your case. This is where we start to get into like the stuff that I personally don't love, and it sounds like you don't love either, which is like just Psychonauts as a platformer. I don't think it feels very good to play. It feels a bit sloppy to me. And you mentioned jank earlier, and you mentioned like jank can give you freedom, and to me, jank can give personality to games too.
Absolutely.
Little quirks of how it feels to play. Psychonauts doesn't feel like that. It just feels like a sloppy platformer to me.
Well, one area that I do think is kind of interesting, and like this is the one thing that I can see maybe people preferring in Psychonauts 1 versus 2. I've talked on streams. I was talking on the stream, the MLeague stream after I beat the game. And I was talking about how much better, like I thought the jump from presentation quality and gameplay quality was like just massive from the first game to the second game. But there were a few people complaining about the levitation ball in Psychonauts 2, and you can definitely see where it's much more kind of locked down, and they didn't want you to be able to jump too high or do anything too crazy with it. And I can understand where that comes from, because Super Mario 64 is I think a perfect video game, and I will not hear any arguments that it controls badly or anything like that, because that game is just so important to me. And when I see like the evolution of Mario games, I do see that, by the time you get to Galaxy, which is still a great game, but they kind of locked down Mario's movement a little more. He's a little stickier. He's doesn't move quite as loosely and freely. And I've often criticized that of, like, oh, I wish games would be a little looser and let you just jump and do crazy things. And if you break the intended method of getting through a level, like, who cares? It's all in the name of fun. And I do see the argument that levitation ball in this game, which lets you jump really high, really easily. It's very floaty. That is, I think, the most fun mechanic in the game, the levitation ball.
Yeah, I'd agree.
In at least in a safer environment, in safe environments. In unsafe environments where it could cost you a lot of progress, it can be frustrating for sure.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's interesting. The game was made well before the Unity engine. It feels like. And not that the Unity engine is inherently bad, but I think the Unity engine has a reputation because I think it is, it's used as a starting point for maybe, beginner developers or maybe developers who just don't have a lot of budget. And I think that comes out in the final game where, it feels a little sloppy. And for some reason, like, just the look and general mechanical feel of this game, like, feels like, a run of the mill, like, $5 Unity platformer. The game is more than that.
Yeah.
But I'm just talking about, like, the core feel of jumping and collision with the environment and the visibility of conveying, like, can I get up there? Am I supposed to go over there? I coming from that adventure game environment, and I don't know if, like, all the staff of Double Fine was from LucasArts, probably not, but I just don't think they were quite ready to make a platformer, but I think they wanted to make a console game, and they thought a platformer just seems like a safe concept to build a console game around at that time. I think they finally got there with Psychonauts 2. I mean, I think that is a technically extremely well executed game, but they weren't quite ready with this first one to really make it stand out as a platformer, like, purely from the gameplay standpoint.
Yeah, it sounds to me, or at least, like, just the feeling that I get, that this is a platformer because the level ideas came first, and then what is a good type of game to make to give players freedom to explore, levels maybe a little bit complicated, a little bit more complicated than something like an adventure game would let you really do. And a platformer is a good way to kind of build out an obstacle course made out of these creative ideas.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that it just doesn't feel good to play. And it's not a matter of the era that it came out, because, like you said, Mario 64 came out a long time before this, and plenty of other platformers that feel really good to play had been out. This one just doesn't feel great. There's 3 things that really, really stuck out to me while playing this, as far as, like, reasons why I don't think it feels great as a platformer. The first one is, you've mentioned before, I had a really hard time with depth perception and understanding 3D space in this game. Things like, there's a figment floating near me. Do I have to jump forward or straight up to get it? I could not figure. I actually played the first half of this game again to refresh before we recorded, and I still can't fucking do it. Stuff like, do I need to do a double jump to get across this gap, a regular jump, or a jump and a glide, or some combination of those? I was consistently overshooting targets.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't figure out how far away it was. Stuff like that. Detection on, like, grabbing ledges and trapeze bars felt off to me too. Like, there's a lot of times when, like, I would fall and I'd be like, I swear I was right next to that bar. Like, I don't know why he didn't grab it. Like, stuff like that happened all the time. And so I talked at the top of the show about this, like, pretty consistent usually low level, just irritated feeling I had, it's because of just constant stuff like that, where it's basic platforming stuff like, do you grab the ledge or do you not? Or how far away is this thing I'm trying to jump to? And it's just like, I couldn't get it in the game. And, you know, if I was the only person out there saying that it felt rough to play, I would kind of accept, oh, maybe I'm just dog shit at the game, but I'm not the only person saying this. So I'm kind of a little bit relieved that like it's more widespread. I mean, I don't want the game to feel like that, but you know, yeah.
And you mentioned that you like had like seen people talking about this game and you know kind of saw that there were some split opinions and you know certain things were divisive. I actually didn't really, aside from my own vague memory of you know 2006, like trying the game and just you know after a couple hours just felt like I'm just not connecting with this. Other than that, like other than I knew that people loved the game, I didn't really hear anyone like say like, oh, the gameplay is kind of bad. So I had tempered expectations based on my own experience, but I wasn't really expecting like, oh, like people were like, oh yeah, that gameplay's kind of rough. Like this was all me kind of just discovering this a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, yeah. So, and I think we ended up coming to very similar conclusions about how it feels mechanically as a platformer.
Yep. The third part of that is you have a lot of psi powers as you play, and a lot of these are used for combat. So you can set stuff on fire. You have a telekinesis where you can pick stuff up and throw it. You have a kind of like a projectile, you know, energy beam or ball that you shoot at enemies and stuff like that. And these, unless you press a button to like lock onto a single target and throw it, they rely on like what's the camera facing or like what's Raz facing, and it will like pick which enemy are you trying to shoot or which object on the ground are you trying to pick up with your telekinesis and stuff like that.
Oh, and telekinesis is so rough.
It's so super rough. Frustrating because I'm not going to like over exaggerate and say every time, but like so many times I want to pick this up, but not that. And I will pick up the thing that I don't want to pick up with the telekinesis power. And, you know, I played Control recently, which is a much more modern game. I know. And still kind of had that issue sometimes. So like, it must be tough to figure out like, you know, if there's different things and you want to pick up one specific thing and throw it, it can't be easy to do it. At least Control highlights the thing before you grab it. Psychonauts is just kind of a crapshoot on what you're going to pick up. And there's a boss fight that depends on this, and it's awful because
gosh, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Because like you try to pick up this thing and and
not only that, but you like have to play partially in the dark during that fight. And you know, most of the times it's like on top of that being so difficult. But a lot of these powers are, you know, basically all these powers I think are, you know, do return in Psychonauts 2 and are, you know, given much more modern technical implementations. Like I wouldn't say that like Psychonauts 2 has like amazing combat, but it feels much more modern. It's much easier to attack what you intend to attack. You know, the telekinesis, you know, it can still be difficult to pick up a specific object, but then you just throw it like the actual, you know, there's no act of like, okay, now I need to like aim it this way or that way. No, you just throw it and it goes where you want it to. So yeah, I mean, these things are significantly improved upon in the sequel. You know, something else I would say just in regards to kind of these combat mechanics that don't really come together that well. I feel like a lot of times they they put a boss into a level just because they felt like they had to. Like, as a platformer, you have bosses, you have mid bosses, stuff like that. I'm specifically thinking of that level in the neighborhood, like where toward the end of the level, you just like get sucked into this like mini boss fight that's kind of annoying. And then there's like no payoff for it. Like that boss has like nothing to do with the story of that level, as far as I can tell. Like, that's not the final boss of the level. Mm-hmm. And so like, it feels like they just were like, this level hasn't had enough combat, because that's that, you know, we'll talk about much more in the spoiler section, I'm sure, but that level is not about combat, and it's like, oh well, maybe people are going to be bored if they don't fight something, so we're just going to make you fight this thing. I was like, no, I don't want to fight this. Yep. I don't want to fight it. I don't want to fight. Like almost every time I had to fight something in this game, I'm like, ugh. Right? Yeah. Like that was the last thing I wanted to do most of the time.
Yep. The very basic enemies, the little sensor guys that run around going, no, like those guys are funny. They're cute.
They're funny. They're actually,
they're not.
They're one of the better character designs in the game.
Yeah. They're not, because they're not as grotesque as the others, but they're fine to fight as kind of like fodder enemies, basically. But I think you keyed in on something there that I really agree with, and I had a point to talk about later on with the levels and the way the platforming kind of escalates as you go. There are lots of things in this game that feel like, as they were making the game, they thought, okay, well, this is what this kind of game has, so we need to put, for example, a mid-boss here, because we don't want people to forget how to fight, or they don't want people to get bored with not fighting. The last level of the game is this ridiculous platforming challenge that it's awful. It's one of the worst video game levels
It is so like, that is the one thing that I said near the end that I really loved.
That's why I freaked out. I thought you were talking about
that.
That
was not that. Not that. That level is garbage. And like, some of the ways you are expected to jump are just like, why did they think forcing you to like make that motion is okay? Because that's like, at least though, like, well, that level doesn't have enough checkpoints, but in general, the game is not too bad with its checkpointing. I will say that. Like, you won't generally have to redo too much if you do die. So that keeps that helps mitigate the frustration. But there is some uncalled for platformer design decisions here for sure.
Right. So most of the time the checkpoints aren't an issue, because most of the time this isn't really that hard of a game. Like, you might miss a jump and stuff like that, but like, you might fall down to an earlier part of that section of the level, or like you said, the checkpoints are pretty generous. But that kind of expectation of, this is a platformer, so the last level has to be the platforming final exam with a timer and, you know, ridiculous things that, like you said, like, some of the challenges in that level, you're like, why are you making me do this right now? Like, we could have enjoyed this last level, but instead we're making the ultimate platforming challenge in a game that doesn't ask for that. No one asked for that.
It's not built for it at all. No. That last level is bad.
Yeah, it's rough. So like that's part of it. Like some of those feels like expectations that they put on themselves, because we're making a 3D platformer with combat. We have to have a bunch of boss fights. We have to have the platforming challenge at the end. And I think a lot of that stuff sucks. I think a lot of the boss fights suck in this game too. Like, they're the times when some of that interactivity of, you know, the telekinesis thing not working the way you want it to work, you're not going to get mad at that during a regular level section with no pressure. The boss fight is where that's going to start to get frustrating. A lot of the boss fights have like special gimmicks to them, or like one specific way to, it's like, some of my least favorite Zelda bosses are the ones where it's like, the one key item that you picked up in this dungeon is the only way you can damage this boss, But in Psychonauts, you didn't just pick up a key item. Who knows what the answer for this puzzle of a boss is?
Right.
Though I had to look up a guide for bosses more often than anything else in this game, because I would just circle around, avoid attacks, maybe die a couple times and be like, what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like kind of at the midway point, there's a boss that you fight where you have to kind of trap an appendage that they attack you with. And like the first time I did it, it was like by complete accident. And I like couldn't recreate, like I could not figure out how to recreate it. I had to look that up because like just visually, like how it animates and the timing and the positioning is just very unintuitive.
That's a word that I would use for some of the levels too. Unintuitive. Like I mentioned that theater level earlier. This is part of a greater point about gameplay in Psychonauts. So I'm just gonna say, I think so many of the ideas from gameplay side of things too are super creative and cool, neat ideas. And a lot of them turn into unintuitive messes of levels or boss fights where like they had an awesome idea for a level and it shouldn't be a video game level without better indications of what I'm supposed to do, or a boss fight of, you know, better indication of what power is going to hurt this thing. How do I interact with this level to solve the thing that they've built? Which, looking from the outside, if I just told you what the concept of the theater level is, you'd be like, that sounds kind of fun. Like, that sounds cool.
Yeah.
But in practice, I fucking hated that level because I had no idea what I was supposed to do, or like what combination of things was I supposed to do. You know, that's some of that adventure game logic coming into it, I think.
Right. And I feel like if the game had leaned more into the adventure game kind of concept instead of a 3D platformer, I think it could have been more successful, because I think conceptually the neighborhood level and the theater level are probably the most interesting concepts in the game.
They're cool.
And I like a lot of what that theater level wanted you to do, but the platforming you have to do to execute on, you know, changing the scene and the way that you need to change it is frustrating. And it also doesn't help that, you know, this game is training you to play it as a platformer, but then it asks you to think like an adventure game, and your mind's like not warmed up to be thinking like, okay, I need to equip this item, or I need to use this ability. You know, I really liked the neighborhood level because that level, you know, like I mentioned earlier, it has very little fighting, and when it does make you fight, it's very annoying, but when you're not fighting, it's great. And that level very much revolves around inventory. You have to equip items throughout to progress, and that very much taps into, I think more than anything else in the game, into that adventure game background. And for the most part, it's like very much adventure game light. Like it's pretty obvious and easy to know what item to equip at what time. But there were a few times where I'm like, oh, why can't I get past this? I can't think of what like item to use. And then I felt stupid. I looked it up, and it turned out I needed to use an ability that like I rarely had used and acquired a while ago. And I was like, oh, that's like so obvious, but I hadn't thought of that. But I might have thought of that had the game been training me to think in an adventure game sort of mindset from the beginning. Yeah. So like it even when it does venture into that adventure game background, it kind of hamstrings itself by having trained the player to play a platformer and not an adventure game. But I think that those are where I get the glimpses of the game that I wish it was instead.
You saying going through the neighborhood level, because I had this too, and just being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, and then looking up the answer and being like, oh, I might have figured that out. That's adventure games. That's just what That's my experience with every adventure game I've ever played. It's just like you said, that level comes at hour 5 or 6 maybe in the game, and you have never had such concentrated adventure gameplay up until that point. They've like very infrequently had stuff where it's like, oh, use your inventory to show this item to this person before, and it will like show you that, oh, that's something you can do. And if you want to, actually, you can go basically like most of those items that you can like pull out and show people, you can show that to all the kids, all the counselors. They'll all have dialogue for most different items. It's like really cool.
It's kind of worth it. I mean, again, that's very much how those LucasArts adventure games are structured.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's often worth doing just because what they say and how they say it is funny. I mean, it's fully voiced, everything, even those like incidental lines, like showing an item that you have no reason to show this character. Yeah. They've got dialogue for that. So, yeah, I don't know. And it's interesting. The second game doesn't really have a mechanism for doing that kind of level design. They lean much more into the platformer. You don't have levels like the neighborhood that mostly revolves around choosing the correct things from your inventory. But even though I saw a ton of potential in those ideas in the first game, I think just making a better all-around platformer ended up being the right pathway for the second game. I think, it leans much more into being a platformer, and they had the skills at the time to do it.
It's good.
Didn't seem to have quite yet at DoubleFine in 2005.
Yeah. So kind of like running through in my head, let's just say that there's 10 levels. There's around 10, 12-ish, something like that. I would say there's probably like 1 or 2 that I really like had a complete experience with and like really enjoyed the concept, didn't have trouble figuring out what I was supposed to do with the boss, didn't run into an issue with like this platforming section sucks and stuff like that. We'll talk about those in the spoiler section in more detail, but there's so many levels where it's like, I love the concept, but I can't figure out what the game wants from me here. Or the concept, pretty much throughout all of them, the concepts are great, but it's always like, this is a platforming test that sucks and I don't want it. And no one was asking for the hardest platforming. This level has like this bull running through the streets that will take you back to the beginning of the level, and it's super frustrating. It feels like so many of like the gimmicks that they came up with were very cool on paper, but just don't add anything. They subtract from the experience of like exploring and living in these levels and just the overall gameplay experience.
I think a perfect encapsulation of just how frustrating the platforming can be, relatively early in the game, you go into Raz's mind, or it's sort of a different circumstance that you go into his mind, but you're in this sort of strange place, and there's all this like dry shrubbery that if you like bump into it, it kind of goes and like it just kind of like bounces and shakes, and you like can't go past it. And as I was, trying to collect figments and seeing where I could go in the level, like I was like, wow, I can't figure out how to make this long jump or how to get over to this area where I see these figments. But when I went past that, I could see a way back there, which I don't think was the way I was really intended to go. Well, as I'm working my way backwards to recollect these figments, like I end up jumping like onto this dry shrubbery, and the way that like Raz's like hit detection or his reaction from like hitting that stuff, he's like on top of it, but like constantly being knocked back through this like little shaking animation that it does. And I was stuck. I could not jump off them. It was like pushing me into a corner that I could not like work my way out of. I couldn't make him turn around in any way. And like that I ultimately had to, reset the game and replay a portion of the level. Mm-hmm. And that's just, a perfect encapsulation, I think, of just like it was unclear what they wanted me to do. And then they didn't take into account what kind of situation someone might run into when they couldn't read the level design.
Yeah. I hate when people say this, when they say something to the effect of like, they didn't play test this, but
of course they did.
But did playtesters not mention that so many of these levels are really hard to read and understand what is wanted from you or where you can go sometimes? Stuff like that. It was a pretty consistent thing of being like, I don't see any way to get up there. Yeah. Or in the Milkman level, like, I didn't know you could go in the houses because they don't look like you can go in them.
It's actually quite shocking that you can go into every single one.
Yeah.
But then they all look the same not entirely, but like you start to think like, oh, there's nothing important in these. Do I really need to go into all of them?
Right.
So yeah, I think though that likely is where the checkpoints come from. Like that was probably the easiest way to fix their problems, like on time and on budget, was like, oh, well, let's just add more checkpoints. Like that way people won't be frustrated. That was easier to do than, fixing some of these like core design problems at that point in development.
Yeah, it would be a whole hell of a lot worse if the checkpoints were like old school platforming checkpoints, So, all right. Well, we have gone through kind of the experience of playing Psychonauts, and I think that the major takeaway is that, like the story, the ideas are basically always cool, but the execution of the ideas is a huge mixed bag, and that might even be being a little bit too kind based on my first experience playing Psychonauts. The second time, like, I played about halfway through the game, I started to like wrap my head around it more, use the bounce, levitate more. I know what to do. All those times when I'm like walking around being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I know what to do now. So like that helps. The first time, pretty frustrating across the board. But it's good to know at least that the second game plays like a platformer that is fun and responsive and intuitive to control. So I have that to look forward to.
Yes. Do look forward to it. It's excellent.
Hell yeah. So let's take a music break here. When we come back, we'll kind of give our wrap-up thoughts on Psychonauts before spoiler time. All right, so in this wrap-up section here, before we get to spoilers, we always like to kind of, if you have thoughts in summary about Psychonauts, we went on quite a journey in that non-spoiler section. A lot of praise up front, a lot of criticism right before this part here. If you have wrap-up thoughts, and also, who would you recommend to play Psychonauts 1? And also, one more question for you, Tri. I know we've talked a lot about how Psychonauts 2 is a better game, basically. I'll just say that out front. Do you think that people should or like need to play Psychonauts 1 before that second game? Like what is the value here of that first game?
I think the biggest value of that first game is that I don't think Psychonauts 2 would be nearly as good if you don't play it. So yeah, it is, it is worth spending that 10 to 12 hours of powering through Psychonauts 1. don't feel bad about looking up how to do some of the unintuitive stuff, how to beat some of the bosses that might require you to do something weird. Like I have faith in you, even if you don't think you're a good 3D platformer fan. You can do it. You can do it, and it won't take that much of your time. And Psychonauts 2 like literally takes place like a couple of days after the first game. And there is, by the way, a VR game that actually takes place between the two, which obviously takes place like, I guess, the next day. I've actually not played it yet. But the beginning of Psychonauts 2 like makes it very clear like what happened. It's apparently very short. It's only a few hours long, couple hours long. I would like to play that. But when I looked it up, it was like $20 on Steam, and I'm like, well, I'll wait for it to go on sale. Like it sounds like it's short enough that I wouldn't want to spend quite $20. So, but I didn't feel lost having not played that, but I think you would feel lost if you hadn't like been introduced to the core cast, of, the counselors, all of the counselors are back and stuff like that. So, you and Raz's history with his family and stuff, like you want that background, like you want to feel some attachment to these characters and the concept of the Psychonauts. I wouldn't recommend jumping straight into the second game, but you do know that you have a much more fun platforming experience ahead of you, and a more involved story, I would say. So it but yeah, I mean, the value in that probably is the biggest value in the first game, but also I would recommend it to people who like LucasArts adventure games. I mean, the writing is the same thing as those games, down to, like you were mentioning earlier, just showing all these random items to all the NPCs. You can do that. It's written and structured in much the same way. And if you like that, you will absolutely get a kick out of Psychonauts. But if you don't like the platforming, or you're not much of a skilled platformer player, don't be afraid to look up how to do these things, because it really isn't that hard to get through, but it can be frustrating. And so yeah, its main value, I think, is in the writing, the voice acting, the core concept, and the promise of a much better game to follow.
Yeah, I don't have the experience of obviously with Psychonauts 2, but I do agree with you. Like, if you like the kind of comedic style of those adventure games and the kind of over the top characters and the cartoony feel and stuff that we've talked about, I think that the story and characters of Psychonauts are genuinely really good. And
yes,
like you said, the gameplay is not hard except for the last level. That's just a real hateful fucking level. Other than that, it's not hard. And we had a good old fashioned complaint session during the gameplay chat here, but like, it's not a disaster. Like, it's not an unplayable mess of a platformer. It's just not a good one. So like, you can get through it. You can play the game. I think you can enjoy the things that are there and easy to enjoy. It's just like, if you love 3D platformers because of the tight, expressive movement and exploration and stuff, like, I don't think this game's going to give that to you.
No.
Yeah. So there's if you like collectathons, if you like collecting stuff, there's a lot of stuff to collect in Psychonauts. It's just, can be tough to collect them with some of the stuff we talked about earlier. So, I said at the top of the show, I come in here with a really conflicted feeling where, like, in my heart, I like Psychonauts, but when you break it all down and talk about the experience of playing it, especially on that platforming side, I don't think it's very good. But the things that are good about Psychonauts are good enough that I can base a recommendation on those things. And then, as you've said, try the second game. If you like what Psychonauts 1 is doing, you can trust that the second game is going to up the gameplay side of things to kind of match the presentation and story side of things too. Yeah. So something for me to look forward to for sure. So qualified recommendations for both of us. despite, big criticisms that we have about some parts of the experience, it's still a game with value to play. It's not, I've had, very few, but sometimes I'll have a game on the show where I'm just like, this sucks. Don't play this. And Psychonauts is not one of those.
No, absolutely.
Despite the criticism.
You should play it.
There we go. Yeah, I would tend to agree, especially, if you value people making games out of the cool creative ideas that they have. We always say that we want people to take creative risks, and we'd rather play interesting, flawed games than safe, quote, good games. And Psychonauts is a very, very interesting, very, very flawed game. So check it out. If you value that, I think it's here. So, all right, little housekeeping before we get into spoilers here. We always start by talking about the things that the guest does. So at the top of the show, I said Tri is one of the hosts of My Life in Gaming and also a founder of the Backloggery. And also one more thing that I'll talk about after he brings those up. So Tri, please tell people about the Backloggery and My Life in Gaming.
Yeah, the Backloggery is a website I made with my friends Drumble and Xavier back in 2007, where, it's a backlog collection tracking site. And it really encouraged me to focus on, playing through the games that I have. And, unfortunately starting a YouTube channel, some years later, encouraged me to be like, ooh, this game is interesting because of XYZ, and I should get that in case it's useful for a video someday. And now my backlog is a disaster. But at one time, the Backloggery helped me get it on track. And last year, there was a long-awaited remake of the Backloggery launched, and so it is I think it still has a bit of an old school mom and pop website vibe to it, but it has been modernized a lot. I think it's a safe, cozy place away from the rest of what the internet has become. So check that out if you like the sound of that. We do streams every Monday night on the Backloggery Twitch channel, usually trying to make backlog progress. And also My Life in Gaming. I started in 2013 with my friend Corey Carlson, who I met as a member of the Backloggery. And it's our show was never really intended to have any particular kind of focus, but it's kind of settled into mostly being kind of retro adjacent, a lot of stuff about hardware and stuff like that. Not that we're really experts in that kind of stuff, but I think that's what people watch us for, because we're just dummies trying to figure it all out. And so that helps us be able to communicate, to other people trying to figure it out. Like, hey, we just figured it out, like this kind of confusing topic, and we can kind of, dumb it down to our level and explain it in terms that we understand, which, seems to make it easy for some other people to understand. And we stream on the My Life in Gaming YouTube channel every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Cool. Well, I think a lot of people that are here have probably heard of or watched My Life in Gaming before, but I mean, it's a great channel, and you say that you're some dummies trying to figure it out. I love watching the things that I've caught, especially the production value of your videos is very, very, very high. Really good stuff, to the point where I make some stuff for my YouTube channel every now and then, but it's just me talking into this microphone with a trailer playing or something like that. There's a lot more that goes into My Life in Gaming. So it's very cool to see, if you're highlighting a piece of tech or a game or something like that. And I'm very jealous of your game rooms. It's very, very cool.
Well, thank you.
I love, by the way, I don't know if you guys talk about these a lot or hear about these a lot, but I love your end of year wrap up videos.
Oh yeah.
Not, you say you focus a lot on retro games and tech and stuff like that, But the Game of the Year stuff is a big just collection of all the cool stuff that you and Corey have played. And I think those are really, really good videos.
Yeah,
So just
it's
something cool.
People always, a ton of people say that's their favorite thing that we do. And I think they like it because it's not just like another, Game of the Year list. Like, yes, there are a handful of games that came out that year, but
right.
It's, it's games from all generations, just whatever we happen to get around to playing that year. And you never know what's next. And I always like to hear it when people say they really enjoy our videos that are just focused on games, because I feel like our audience our subscriber base was really built on like the tech side, which is certainly very challenging and daunting and, kind of is often, sometimes we're like so scared of a topic that we, and being sure that we get it right, that we end up just spinning our wheels and taking forever to get it done. So even though we feel like this obligation to do a lot of the tech stuff, and not just purely an obligation, we are genuinely interested in it. But when people say like, man, this, like, I love this just like random old video on a game you did, or I love those year-end videos where you talk about a bunch of games, that always means a lot to us, because that shows that you're there for us and the kinds of things that we love, and not just like to get information.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. 100%. And with the Backloggery, just throwing that out there for the Tales from the Backlog audience that's still with us in the show here, I'm just going to go ahead and guess that some people with us could use a little help managing or focusing on the games that you own. So if that sounds good to you, you can check out the Backloggery as well. We have our backlog resolutions that we do as a community, where at the beginning of every year, we pick a list of games that we promise, in quotes, that we're going to play. So I'm sure that some people could use the Backloggery for that.
I've got pledges I made in 2023 that I'm still working on finishing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, luckily no one's holding me to those things that I missed from last year and in previous. So
I'm just holding myself to it.
There we go. It's a way to be. Yeah. So I will put in the show notes down there a link to My Life in Gaming, to the Backloggery, of course. There's also one other thing that Tri and I are both a part of, and that is the King of Games tournament, the yearly King of Games tournament. Over on the Retro Hangover podcast, every year they do a tournament to find out what is the King of Games from a specific year. We took part in some episodes in the King of Games 96, which was last year. And then this year, by the time people hear this episode, it should start to be going out to the public. King of Games 1999, which is a loaded year for video games. So loaded, we added more games to the tournament field. So we did not do any episodes together in the 99 tournament, but we are separately a part of it. So please go consider checking out the King of Games 1999. That is on the Retro Hangover podcast, and I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. King of Games, a lot of fun. I always enjoy doing those.
Oh yeah.
So I did my plugs at the top of the show, but the one thing I didn't say is that I do have a Discord server. If you would like to join and come in, Psychonauts, I know there's a game. This is a game with a lot of thoughts that people have about it. So feel free to come in and chat about the game. Tell us about the other games you're playing. Share pictures of your pets. We're a community more than just a place to talk about the podcast. So there's an invite link down in the show notes if you would like to join Discord. Otherwise, I said all my stuff at the beginning. You know what's up. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, it's going to be full spoiler time for Psychonauts. All right, before we get to full spoiler time for Psychonauts, got a quick plug for another show that I was on, and we got the customary thank yous to do. So in the episode, Tri and I just mentioned the King of Games tournament on the Retro Hangover podcast. We're doing the year 1999, and that tournament is underway on their public feed. Some recent episodes, some recent matchups were Pokemon Yellow versus Dino Crisis, and I was on that episode. And the most recent one, as I'm recording this, is Mario Party versus Pokemon Snap. So if that sounds fun to you, and if you want to follow along with the tournament and see what game we eventually crown the King of Games for 1999, check out the Retro Hangover podcast. And I'll put a link down in the show notes for their show. And as always, I'd like to say thank you to the wonderful patrons who help support the show. And a big thank you goes out to Chris Nelson, the Top 3 Podcast crew, Zulgeek, Chris Copleen, Eric Guess, Rick Firestone, Nick Fakori, Soccer, Cupcake, Kyle, Christian S., Matt aka Stormageddon, JD, Doug Leaf, Jason Emery, Brian Skirsha, Jenny E., Marcus O'Neill, Stefan, Drellish, Rob Smith, Rigamort, Silcanet, Ashton Ruby, Levi, John E., Matthew Turner, Aliasi, Joseph Hooper, and many more. If you would like to join them, head on over to patreon.com/realdavejackson, join in on the fun, help support the show, and get some cool treats in return. And with all that being said, let's go back to full spoiler time for Psychonauts. All right, we're back. Full spoiler time now for Psychonauts, and as always, this is not a linear walk through the story. We are going to start by talking about our favorite levels and or least favorite levels. Not sure where this is going to go first, but just saying this is not a linear discussion. We're just kind of go free here in the non-spoiler or in the spoiler section. So, real spoilers starting now. All right, so. Try good or bad. What's a level or part of the game that stuck out to you that you really wanted to talk about?
So, it's really weird. Like the climb up the asylum at the end. I don't know why, but I've kind of freaking loved it.
Yeah.
I think it was, but it's the creepiest part of the game, right?
Yeah, for sure.
There was like a genuine sense of like fear and dread climbing that tower, and it keeps going on and on and on, and like actually gets to a point where you start to question, like, am I still in the real world? Like, is has the barrier between like mind and physical reality like started to break down here? Like, what is going on? Because it gets pretty crazy. It just keeps going up and up and up and up. And even though the platforming, like the core platforming mechanics are so questionable, I didn't find that level to be too overly frustrating. And I think just seeing how high up you are and like the fear of falling, like kind of like maybe like buckle up and get good, right? Like, because I was like, okay, I want to be very careful here. I don't want to fall. And just that kind of sense of tension and fear. It was just kind of very unexpected once I got to that point in the game, especially like in the real world, because your pathway between like mind levels wasn't really that long at that point.
Yeah.
There wasn't really any combat in that whole part of the game either, which I think made it a better level. So yeah, I don't know what it was. Like, I mean, I've kind of said what I think it was, I guess, but like, in spite of how suspect I think the overall platforming quality in the game is, something about that level was just one of my favorite parts of the game.
Yeah, I like the asylum climb too. I think I like it a little less than you. I hate the rats that explode in there. I died more times in that.
Those were a little annoying for sure.
Yeah, I died more times in that section than probably anywhere else in the whole game.
Even
just
the meat circus
rats,
are really. I didn't die there that much.
Okay. Same type of deal. I failed the meat circus many times. Yeah, but you didn't die in the meat circus, but effectively those are the same thing. So probably equal between those.
I mean, I think part of it could have been like, I was, when I'm playing like a horror game, I have a tendency to like walk slowly and like take in the atmosphere, take in the environment, make sure like nothing is coming to get me. And since that Asylum Climb evoked a very strong like horror game vibe, I think that may have been why I died a little bit less. Because I was just being very slow, very methodical, like keeping my eye out for, Shigor, who we didn't know her name at that point. Kind of looking down and dropping her rats. I was being very conscious and careful of it and like, running the other way as soon as I thought. So yeah, like I was, there was one part I do remember where she sent out rats where I was at a pretty precarious location that annoyed me a bit. But yeah, it may have just been because I like really leaned into the atmosphere that they were building with that level and like was actually like moving forward very cautiously.
Yeah. The atmosphere of it is good, and the platforming challenge of it I thought was okay. Like for a Psychonauts level, I thought this was
level, yeah.
Yeah, probably the best of the platforming stages because it's not nearly as hard as the Meat Circus is, but it's still pretty involved with the platforming that you're doing. And I was kind of running through them in my head. You had like at least 3, maybe even, 4 levels before this in 5 that involved very little like dangerous platforming, because you had the
correct. You're right.
Inside the lungfish where you're the kaiju, you had the theater level, you had the milkman level, you had the streets of Pamplona level. None of those involve intense platforming at all.
No. And the strategy game.
Yeah, and the Napoleon level. Yeah. So you get to this and it's like, okay, it's platforming time, but it's not hateful like the Meat Circus is. I think the rats, and then the fact there's a lot of parts in this game where like if you fail a platforming level, you don't fall to your death, you fall to a lower part of the level and you just have to climb your ass all the way back up there, which is terrible in the Meat Circus. But in this level, like I felt like the different sections of the level were like sectioned off enough where I like, you don't fall all the way to the beginning of the level if you fall down or something like that. So it wasn't as frustrating as it could have been.
Right. I did backtrack a little bit because by the time I got to the top, I was missing one brain.
Yeah, you're collecting, and I was
like I was kind of concerned if like I was like, oh, what if like I get a bad ending if I don't collect all the brains or something?
True. Yeah.
So I did like look up where the missing brain was and like climbed back down a little bit, which was interesting. But
right.
Yeah. I saw you wrote in here, about the conspiracy to harvest the brains, which was kind of, I thought that was an interesting, weird twist to like just how the world of Psychonauts works. Like the brain and like the body can live without the brain, and you're just really stupid and like can't really do anything. Yeah,
they do it really funny where like people who've had their brains removed just walk around going TV.
Yeah.
So.
And it's, I won't spoil anything about the sequel, but like you kind of see that's just like a normal accepted part of how the Psychonauts world works.
Yeah.
Like to the point that there is literally like the agents actually have like some sort of like sneezing powder, so that like like if they are in an emergency where like they think they are going to die, they can like at least eject their brain from their body. So that it can be saved. So like this is just like a normal thing. Like, it's really funny how they represent like Dogen when he's the first one that you see like without a brain, and like he like Raz just like intuitively like just looks through his ear to see if his brain is in there, and he can like see the beach on the other side.
Right. Yeah. It's great.
So it's just it's the kind of concept where like that really could have like felt like they just tried too hard and that wouldn't land, but it's like somehow, like, even as outlandish as it is, like I thought that whole idea was really fun and funny how it it's just like, oh, okay, the brain is not entirely necessary.
Right. Yeah, that kind of thing, where like us bringing up these like story concepts and how funny they are, that's the strength of Tim Schafer and the writers. They are professional comedy writers. They know how to make this stuff funny. And it's pretty consistently funny no matter what they come up with in here. It's just the gameplay side of things doesn't always let you enjoy the humor as much. But like you said, that cutscene where Raz looks through Dogen's head, like that's very funny when you see it. It's good. Oh, and so like just in case anyone's listening along and didn't play the game, the villain of the story is stealing the brains to make psychic battle tanks. They like put a brain in a tank, in a tank, in a tank. And then, you fight those tanks as boss fights a few times. And it happens to Raz at the end of the game where he loses his brain from that sneezing powder. So,
I forgot that sneezing powder was actually in the first game.
Yeah, because you see it early on. He does it to Dogen. He's the first person you see sneeze out his brain.
Right. Okay, I forgot about that.
Yeah. So let's see other levels. We mentioned earlier, before I forget to say this, Mila's level, where her level's just a party. It's just everyone's dancing, having a great time. The music is this dance music. It's really good. There's a part in her level that's hidden away where you can open a chest and go inside, and it's like hell and demons in the chest.
What? Okay, I missed this. What?
Yeah, I missed it my first time, but I found it the second time.
Wow.
So like her backstory is that she was running an orphanage, and one day when she was out running errands, the orphanage burned down and all the kids died. And like that's, horrific, terrible shit. Not played for comedy, but not played for like gravitas in Psychonauts. It's just, that's her story.
Yeah.
And then in her level, you find this chest. I think there's even a sign that says don't open or something like that. And inside it's just fire and hell and demons and shit. And then you can't do anything in there, and you just leave and close the chest. But it's like, I said like the game story like does go deeper than what it actually presents and makes you see all the time. This is one of those things where it's like Mila had this like horrific thing happen in her past, but she has it so tightly stored away in her psyche and like dealt with apparently that it's not dominating her like the milkman or the theater level or something like that.
Right. Well, I remember, and I think it was I don't think it was in Sasha's level. I think it was in Mia's level, where one of the chests had a comic in it that was just like, it was like her and Sasha like going around doing like, just like general fun James Bond spy stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking like, oh, well, I guess, her story doesn't really go any deeper than that. She's exactly what you thought she was. But yeah, what you're talking about, I did not find that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy because it's very different. And then, like I said, it's just neatly packed away in this chest as opposed to some of the other characters. So it kind of shows, if you want to read into it, she has processed and compartmentalized her traumatic past into a thing that's not bothering her in her day-to-day life anymore.
Right.
That she can live with. So that's the kind of stuff like I want the game to make me go through some of those things, and maybe Psychonauts 2 does. But from this story premise, this is what I want. I feel like you can have both. You can have the comedy, you can have the interesting level ideas, and then you can also delve more into these people and as characters with stories and backstories and stuff than Psychonauts 1 at least always makes you do.
Yeah, interesting.
Let's talk about the Milkman level with a little bit more detail now. Let's not bury the lead of everyone's
I mean,
favorite level too much.
I feel like after I beat the game and read around, like it sounds like this is like the iconic level of the game. Like this is what people remember and talk about is the Milkman level, which is what we referred to generally as like the neighborhood level.
Right.
So like, I don't know, you might understand the actual story of what's going on in the level a little better than I do, but I do love the actual presentation of just this like, you know, like 50s or 60s sort of a very generic American neighborhood. Everything looks the same. And there's just all of this suspicion, like literally everyone in the Milkman level looks like that stereotypical like neighborhood watch burglar icon. Yeah. Everyone, like whether they're men, women, they all look the same, and they all have this like this monotone male voice that like sounds like
it's so good.
They're planted there for some purpose that is not who they really are. They're spying on you. They're, you know, and you know, their motives are to be questioned, and you know, they all hold these items that signify what they are. You know, they hold a stop sign and they're like, you know, I am on the road crew, or you know, they hold a rolling pin and they're like a housewife, you know, but they still talk in the same voice. And you know, someone works on the telephone line, someone works in the sewers, someone, they go, I am a grieving widow, you know, when they have I am like a grieving widow.
Here's my bouquet of flowers.
Yeah. It's very clear that like they don't, they don't understand the emotions or purpose of what their role is, because they are stating it very matter of factly, but not emoting in a way that that conveys that is who they really are. They really understand what their role is. Like there's just everything is so off, and it creates this bizarre atmosphere, and it's ultimately about figuring out like who is the Milkman. And, you know, it turns out to be the guy whose mind you went into, and he just couldn't remember who he was. Probably because he was so skeptical and terrified of everyone around him and doubting their intentions, I guess.
That's what it was. Yeah. So he got so lost in the sauce of like surveillance conspiracy, like thinking that the government was spying on him, that he just like completely lost it. So that's the story, and that's why all the people are these you know, government spies or whatever sent to go spy on him. All of those voices are Steve Bloom, which I think is a cool little voice acting note very there. Good. Yeah. But yeah, those characters just, I'm a telephone repairman. I could listen to your conversations, but I don't, out of professional obligation. Like they're so good, all of them. And you can just keep going to them, and there's not an infinite number of them, but there's enough that like, you're not going to hear the same ones too many times. Like there's a lot of variety in those voice lines. And I think that honestly, I think we talked about this earlier. I think part of the reason this is so many people's favorite level is, I mean, the aesthetics of it are great. The kind of spiraling into the sky level design
beautiful. The way that they great. Actually like make that street like go all over the place. I mean, really, I mean, if I was to praise like one technical thing that this game does very well is, you know, it does have like sort of like Mario Galaxy-esque, like sort of messing with your mind, sort of gravity sort of stuff going on, where, you know, you can turn strange corners and you stay stuck to it. You know, doing that. I'm sure Mario, you know, it wasn't the first game to do it, but Mario Galaxy was like, you know, I think the most impactful game that had that kind of, you know, planetary gravity around spheres and strange shapes. And, you know, this game was doing it before it had that as a reference, and it does it relatively well. That was a really interesting aspect of that level. And also, I believe I alluded to it before, it's the one that plays the most like Tim Schafer's previous work at LucasArts.
I was going to say, I think one of the main reasons so many people love this level, beyond the aesthetics and beyond those voice lines from the government workers, is that there's no real platforming and there's no real combat aside from, that sniper section.
Mini-boss.
Yeah, and then the boss at the end of it. Other than that, it's just exploring and enjoying this weird level that they made.
Yeah. The part that tripped me up, well, actually, there were two parts. I didn't think to use the clairvoyance to see the guy enter the password to enter the post office.
Neither did I.
I didn't. I felt I should have watched what he did more clearly, but like, again, as I was saying, like the game up to that point in the game, your mind hasn't been trained to think in adventure game terms.
Exactly.
So like things that if I was playing an adventure game, I probably would have been looking out for clues like that, but I wasn't in adventure game mode. And the other thing was when you are when you go the other side of the sewers and there's like all those assassins.
Yeah.
And you have to like hold this gun to blend in with the assassins. Well, there is someone shooting you from the rooftop and you have to use your shield. There's like I don't remember exactly what it's called, but there's a psychokinetic shield ability. And I can't remember exactly when you get that ability. It was like a level or two before then, and I really didn't have a need to use it that much. Yeah. So like I wasn't even thinking, like it's so obvious in retrospect, but that was the other thing I had to look up.
Yep. The thing with, I maybe should have brought this up in the non-spoiler section so everyone can ring the bell. It's happened in this episode too, but your progression with getting new abilities is sometimes gated by how far you are in the story, like the tutorial abilities. I think the shield is one of them, but the clairvoyance is not one of them. You get that by leveling up your psi level, by collecting figments and those
really?
cards and the psi cores and shit.
I thought clairvoyance was... I thought the milkman gave you that at the start of the level, because remember he's like, here, use this to see the world as I see it.
Right. It's not that. It's, I think it's one of the other ones that you get before that, and you need it for a later level. But it's based on your level, and you go and you give the thing to Kruller, and he gives you the new ability. And I think Psychonauts should just make everything gated by the story. Right. You get new powers as you progress through the story.
And Psychonauts 2 does do that. I don't.
Good. So they learned. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything like that. The one thing that frustrated me was having to collect so many arrowheads, which are your money.
Dude, yeah.
There were relatively early in the game, like I was like, ugh, like I want to buy some of these things, but they cost so much money, and I'm like. At first, I really just looked up like, okay, like what's an easy way to grind money in Psychonauts? Well, unfortunately, I ended up reading more than I really intended to. And it's like, oh, well, you should save up for these 3 things because you're going to need the cobweb duster for progressing through levels. Yep. So, you want to get the item that like doubles I think there's an item that doubles, or maybe I'm thinking of Psychonauts 2. But there's
the dowsing rod. The dowsing rod, the buried arrowheads.
Feels real bad to use, to be honest.
It's terrible. Yeah, it's awful.
It feels real bad to use. It is not fun going around grinding up that money. Luckily, it did not take as long as I thought it would.
I was maybe like 10, 15 minutes the last time, because I've done it twice now.
Yeah, and you were able to get the duster and whatever the other critical item was. But yeah, the cobweb duster was one of those things I was talking about near the beginning, where it's like, okay, like I'm collecting these cards, but I can't level up or benefit from them until I buy the Psy core from the store. And then I have to take the cards and the core to Ford Kreller's lab, and I have to approach the correct machine, except I won't, because I'll approach the cobweb duster machine the first time every time by mistake, because just don't, they don't look like anything, they're just weird machines. And then I approach that one, and then it lets me get the level up from the Psy core and the cards. And then like the duster is like the same thing, except you have to dump them out. It's just like, why are there all these steps? And I was confused. I mean, again, this could have been something for the non-spoiler section, but like they call them Psy challenge markers.
Yeah.
Which,
dude,
like,
yes.
What does that even mean?
My first playthrough, I didn't do it because I thought it was going to do a platforming or a combat challenge.
I thought like, a Psy challenge marker is going to be like, I was imagining like the little like Super Mario Sunshine, like little side levels, like the short little, bonus level type thing. Yeah. I thought it was going to be something like that. I was trying, the closest thing I could figure out when I was like, is this like, I went to like summer camp a time or two. Is this some sort of like weird, like summer camp lingo, a challenge marker that I don't know about? I couldn't find any evidence of that. The closest thing I could find is like, I vaguely heard of this term before, like challenge coins. It's like a military thing. Like you get a challenge coin for some reason or other, but I don't think that means anyone's actually going to challenge you to a match of anything. Like, it's just a weird term, and they use that. They're like, oh yeah, go get your Psy challenge marker, and then you get your Psy cards, and they say these words all the time. Like I'm supposed to know what the heck a Psy challenge marker means, and Psychonauts 2 luckily significantly streamlines all this stuff. There's no cobweb duster. The one thing that's kind of weird is that they still make you buy the Psy core for the cards, except you can combine them in the shop menu. Like you don't have to then go to another location to actually combine them. So they at least they see. I still don't, the whole Psy core, Psy challenge marker still doesn't makes sense to me, like just from a standpoint of what even is this? What does this mean? Why is this the object? What is the theming here? I don't get it, but at least it is significantly more streamlined than it was in the first game, which just makes you run all over the place. You collect money to buy the thing. It's just too many steps. Like, and I don't know if that was just from inexperience in platformer design or what, but like, boy, they sure make you collect a lot of different things in this game.
It's one of those parts where they could have really streamlined it. Yeah, one of those parts where adventure game design and platformer design just didn't mix, because like you want to get to the next level. But like you said, you need that cobweb duster, and it costs 800 arrowheads. Yeah. And when I first found that, I had like 40 arrowheads. I was like, how the fuck am I supposed? Yeah. So that sucked. And it sucks doing the dowsing rod, even if it's not that long. And then, like you said, the challenge markers, there's nothing I would rather do less in Psychonauts than a platforming or a combat challenge. So they just needed to name that shit something else to be very clear about what it is. Yeah. Call it a level up core or whatever.
Or even just call it just a Psy core. Like you have the Psy core and the cards, and together they are the Psy challenge marker.
Yeah.
Why?
Exactly.
Why?
Yep.
Like this terminology is like, I do wonder maybe that comes possibly from the adventure game mentality, because one consistent trademark of LucasArts adventure games, to my knowledge, like I haven't played Day of the Tentacle or Full Throttle, and I think there might be another one or two that I haven't played somewhere in there, but as far as I know, it's very consistent. You cannot lose in those games. Like there's no like death state. You don't have to
Right.
reload your save. This isn't King's Quest where there's a million ways to die. You are very safe in LucasArts adventure games. And because of that, I think they derive a lot of comedy from ridiculous situations, because no matter how much you poke and prod at an enemy, potentially even, a dangerous character like a pirate, like you're never going to work yourself into a dangerous, unwinnable situation. And maybe the fact that you could, talk to a character over and over and over and over again, they'd always have like something new to say, and it took forever for them to actually loop their dialogue and stuff like that. Like, I wonder if some of that, like that mentality of design, like bled into some of these sort of tedious things that they make you do in Psychonauts, like running all over the place just to combine these cards and cores. Maybe they were just thinking like, oh, ha 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 ha, like that's making you run around as part of the humor. And it's like, I don't know if that works in this kind of game.
Right. Making you like go back to different places in the camp. Cause I think because they do the adventure game thing where all the characters in the camp have a bunch of new dialogue, depending on where you are in the story and what item you show them. Like, I think they want you to go around the camp more than is required to like cross the camp to do something for the story.
Right.
So I think that's probably why, but you can also just do the fast travel thing and skip all that. So there's a lot of things, man. There's a lot of things in the game where it's like, I see why, but it just, in this game, it's not welcome.
Yeah, and like again, in like Ford Cruller's like base, like when he's like introducing you, it's like, oh, there's this machine down here, then there's this other machine down there, and then down that hallway is this other thing over here, and like it's like I do not understand all these things you are telling me, and like that hallway isn't even anywhere you need to go until like near the end of the game.
Yeah,
but he's like explaining all these things
back,
like
right?
up front, huh?
Yeah,
that's where you deliver. That's where you deliver the brains, and if you use the bacon to like teleport to his lab, that's, you have to talk to him there to teleport back to the right place. And I was being very careful when I told you I like went back for the brain and like had to deliver the brain. Like, I was very careful to make sure I didn't do something to trigger him, because he's always like, well, let me see if I can remember where you were. And so if I used the bacon again, like he would have not sent me back to the top of the tower, and I would have had to do the tower climb again. So I was very careful. Like, I was like really thinking the steps ahead. I'm like, okay, I want to make sure that I could get back to that point while still collecting all the things. Because I think there was actually one more brain at the bottom of the asylum. And so I had to use the bacon. So there were two brains I was missing, because there's one like some crows carry away. And like, I think all you have to do is shoot them with a kinetic blast. I don't know why I didn't figure that one out myself. I think I tried that and it just didn't work the first time or something. But anyway, like, I had to go back to the lab. I had to then take the lungfish to the base of the tower, go into the tower, get that one missing brain at the bottom of the tower. Then I couldn't use the bacon to go back to the lab because I was afraid, like, how can I get back to the lab without, and I had to remember, in your items, you've got this like, it's like a conch shell or something, I think, to like call the lungfish to carry you across. And like, I hadn't used that at that point. So I'm like, I hope this works, because I knew that would work to go from the beach to the asylum. I wasn't sure if it would work the other way. So I was really nervous I was gonna have to do the whole asylum climb again, even though I kind of enjoyed that. But I was careful enough to like make sure that I didn't lose my bacon checkpoint.
Yeah.
And all that.
Well, it's nice. I didn't even know that it kept a checkpoint for you. I actually never used the bacon at all.
That's actually my one. Oh, you never used the bacon? Well, you probably, you still saw Ford's like projection like pop out of Raz's ear sometimes,
for sure.
right? Even without, because that was like, even though I don't really care for like the like kind of gross character designs, that I thought was very funny.
Yeah.
Like the face Raz makes, like when he like pops out of his head, he's just like, ah! Like he's just like grossed out by it. Like,
yeah,
I thought that was very funny.
As far as levels and stuff, we talked about the kaiju inside the lungfish level. We mentioned it. It's fun. I had a great time with that. The theater level we talked about in the non-spoiler section. I said everything I had to say. I hate that level.
I did like the idea behind it though, of like having to change the scenes and also change, like mismatch the mood of the scene and like figure out like that. Again, that was like good adventure game concepts. You know, but in the context of a platformer, it was a bit clunky to integrate those concepts. It would have worked better in a, you know, point and click game.
And there's, as you're trying to do those adventure game things, there's another one where like the two sides of this game don't mesh. As you're trying to do that adventure game stuff to mess with the set, the enemies in the level are constantly chasing you around, setting you on fire and stuff like that. It's just like profoundly not fun to go through, in my opinion. There's a couple other levels we haven't mentioned much. The one we haven't like really talked about is the Napoleon level, which I think. Yeah. What did you think of this before I say what I have to say?
First of all, I'm embarrassed how long it took me to figure out how to destroy those like cannons, or what were they exactly? Like you had to like you like make them go back into their shell, and then like a bomb wick appears on the top. And you like use pyrokinesis to light the wick, and then they explode and won't bother you anymore. Like I would have been like, it took me like until like near the end of the level when I actually noticed that when they like shell up, they have that wick, and I'm like, oh, that was so obvious. I should have been doing this the whole level. I would have been way less annoyed. That level is okay, I guess. I thought finding the like that coin in the fire was kind of, I think I ended up looking up where to find that, like, because I was convinced like the bookshelves in the room where they're playing the game, I thought the bookshelves were going to like open up and like lead to a kitchen or something, because he said something about trying to burn it, and I thought it was like he was trying to melt the coin or something. I thought it was going to be in another room, but that just wasn't actually a thing. It was an interesting level, like a very much like a light strategy sort of concept, except, you know, you can't really lose. A cool idea for sure. Boy, I was sure annoyed though by the apple orchard, where like the figments just like never stopped falling out of the trees. Like you could like keep hitting the trees and like shaking the figments out, and there were so many figments to get out of the trees. Like I know I didn't have to collect them, but like I felt obligated to, and it just like that part just like never ended.
I think I would have liked this level more if there was a bit of actual strategy, because you're playing this board game on like this hex grid, rather than the level was just adventure game errands. Like, go talk to this soldier, run across the map, talk to this thing, climb out of the game, go talk to the guy, climb back into the game, go talk to the soldier, over and over and over and over again. Basically across the board, love the idea for a level, but then when it comes down to like how do I progress and what am I actually doing? I don't like it that much. Like it, as far as the levels go, if I were to tier rank the Psychonauts levels, this would be one of the better ones, I think, just because it's not hatefully difficult or really hard to figure out.
The platforming in that
tedious.
level was, the platforming was okay in that level.
It was
like
fine,
wasn't some of the more egregious platforming, other than the fact that it just took me forever how to destroy those enemies that are like launching bombs at you.
It's just kind of tedious as an experience to go through.
And ultimately, if you knew what to do, you probably wouldn't have to like go in and out of the board so many times. Like it's probably the actual number of required steps is probably not that high, but figuring it out, it definitely took a lot. It was one of the more time-consuming levels, I would say.
Yeah. And I think if it was less running from point A to point B to point C to point A to point B, repeat that 5 times to go through the whole sequence of them playing the game. And like, if I actually got to play the game a little bit, I think it would be a really fun level. Maybe combine placing things on the board in strategic ways, and then I have to jump out and do some platforming stuff, or jump out and, deliver a weapon to this soldier so he can become a piece that does something on the board. I don't know, something like that would have been a lot more fun. But aesthetically and concept-wise, it's super cool to play inside of a board game. Like, again, Psychonauts, full of awesome ideas. Execution is a whole other thing. Yeah.
And that was another example of where like the actual like mechanics of using the telekinesis, moving the board game pieces was just like actually making things go in the direction you want just feels more awkward than it should.
The milkman level boss was the worst for telekinesis. That was just awful.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you have to use clairvoyance so that you can even, once she turns out the lights, like you have to use clairvoyance to even see yourself and your environment. And then like, she was, at least the checkpoint was right there at the start of the fight, and the fight doesn't actually have that many steps. So like, it's when you do fail, it's not like you've been fighting her for 10 minutes and you've lost all this progress, but it's very annoying. I wish there was another checkpoint like at the part where she turns out the lights, because that part was, everything before then was easy, but
I think that there's a couple bosses and frankly a couple levels. I'll just like flat out say I don't think anything in Psychonauts should be difficult. It's just not a game that is asking for a challenge.
Right.
Like, I don't think players are asking for a challenge.
It's very much about the atmosphere, the vibes, the ideas, the writing. Like, this is not meant to be your, challenge yourself and get the best score kind of platformer. You're right. Absolutely right. It's about discovery.
Yeah. And story. It's about discovery and
story. Yeah. So, collecting things could be a fun challenge, but actually like, failing to, grab a ledge or whatever. I'm with you there. That's not the kind of design that benefits it.
Right. And that's why the meat circus is such a fucking disaster of an idea for a final level. I can't believe
there's like that one part where you're like climbing this like mesh, and you have to like jump from the outside of one mesh to the inside of another mesh. And it is like the most awkward motion you can imagine asking a platforming character to make.
Yep. I can't tell you how many times I fell off of that exact mesh, or like ran out of time.
Yeah.
Fell off, climbed back up. I think you can only fall off maybe once, maybe twice if you're fast, before the rising water will get you. So when we say the meat circus, I think both of us immediately snap to the part inside the circus tent where you're doing the climb, and you're your dad, or supposedly your dad is taunting you and throwing shit at you and stuff like that. And the water is rising, so it's on a time limit. But there's an earlier part of the meat circus.
It's maybe worse, actually, but you're right. We do think of that other part.
One of the worst escort missions I've ever done in a video game. This is the type of shit that gives escort missions a bad rep around video game talk.
I'm always like defending escort missions, being like I think most people are just like, escort mission equals bad. And I'm like, escort missions can be totally fine. I mean, Resident Evil 4, you know?
Exactly.
That's half what the game is about, you know? It's a great game. But, you know, I think it all goes back to GoldenEye. You know, people really didn't like having to escort Natalia in the control room level. And that she has given all escort, but you're right. Like this might be the worst escort mission, where it's not really an escort mission, but you have to get to where the child version of Coach Oleander is. And
it's like the bunny. You're following the bunny, and like these monsters are attacking it.
And this is probably the part of the game that has the least good checkpointing. Because there are no checkpoints in this whole section. I think you have to reach Oleander and save him 4 times, I think.
Yep.
Like at least 4, if not 5 times. And it gets increasingly difficult to get up to where he is and defeat the enemies before he runs out of health. And, you know, luckily his health restores after each encounter, but there are no checkpoints, and there is very little margin of error. And the platforming to get there is difficult and often unclear. Like you figure it out, but it is unclear initially. Like, where do I go forward?
Yep.
Like I think a more better platformer would have like shown where he is, and then like move the camera back in such a way where you would clearly see this is the path forward, especially since you're in such a hurry. It's a horrible. Like, and then, you know, on top of that, the bosses weren't too fun. And I you know, it was actually shouldn't have been that difficult to figure out how to defeat like Oleander's vision of his dad, where you like
the big one.
Like it shouldn't have been that hard, but I was just so frustrated by the level that I looked up how to beat the boss, because I didn't even care. I didn't feel like figuring it out because I was just so annoyed.
Dude, so the way you do it is you wait till he does the big slam and then you run up his arm. And that's like video game 101, but I also looked it up because I was like, fuck this. Like, I'm ready for this to be over after that previous, those previous 2 sections. One thing to note is, did you download this or did you pop an original Xbox disc into your Xbox to play it?
I would suspect that it would be the same version either way, but what I actually put in was, so I do have like a actual like original Xbox disc, but when I bought the physical, the Xbox Series physical is like probably the coolest like physical that's ever been done for like current gen Xbox, because you know current gen Xbox is generally not the place for physical media. But the physical for this is like really cool, although I think there were a few variations, and the one I got was it has a both Xbox One and Xbox Series X disc for Psychonauts 2. Because like, in other words, like it actually has the Xbox Series X code on the disc, which is not typically the case for Xbox Series games. It's actually Xbox One code on the disc, and the series code is through download only. But it also has in a separate case Psychonauts 1, like the backwards compatible version, like on the disc.
Okay.
which is really cool. It's still the backwards compatible version. It's the original Xbox game in backwards compatibility mode. I'm pretty sure it would have played 100% the same. I don't think there would have been any differences if I used my like regular disc, but I did use the one that came with my Psychonauts 2 set.
Okay. So the reason I asked that is because I know that the Meat Circus was patched along as time went. So I don't know how it works if you had to download anything at all, but if you had played the original Xbox game on an original Xbox, the Meat Circus would have been much worse than it is in the current state. Including the one that I played, just the PC version that I downloaded. So that's why I asked, because imagine the Meat Circus with a harsher timer and more stuff that you have to deal with. Oh my gosh. Along the way.
I suspect the version that they would have you play in backwards, because even if you insert an original Xbox disc, like you don't play the code off that disc, like they still download from the store. Like that, it's just a key for you to play it. I'm sure they only have the latest version to download for backwards compatibility. I suspect it would be the final revision, which would have those tweaks.
Yeah. Because Psychonauts was originally released, and then it got like a PC release in like 2019 or something like that. And it might have just been like when they did that re-release, they were like, hey, let's fix the Meat Circus up just a little. Like, let's not make it good. Let's not make it fun, but let's make it slightly less hateful. Yeah. So I think that's when the patch was introduced.
So that's interesting. So the version you played was a PC version that was released in only like 2019-ish?
Something like that. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I wonder how, like, did it feel like did they like have like high res HUD and stuff, or was it kind of the old like Xbox quality assets?
I think the HUD and stuff looked fine. The cutscenes were in an old resolution. They were not in 4K.
Yeah, they were close. FMV, in engine graphics, but pre-rendered video. Yeah.
Right. So like that stuff.
It's the same way. Yeah, because like, I mean, playing on Xbox Series, like it is not a port. It is definitely not a port. It's just running the original Xbox version in backwards compatibility mode.
This is, I don't mean to take this on a side tangent, but like getting this game to recognize a controller was a bit of a process. Oh. So like it was interesting. Like you had to have your controller on when you booted the game up. Otherwise it would not find your controller. So like stuff like that. Anyway, imagine the Meat Circus worse than in the way that both of us probably played it. Yeah. That's the original one. So had you played the PS2 version, that would have added on to your issues. So,
I'm sure. Yeah.
Was there anything else about Psychonauts that you wanted to touch on before we wrap this up?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head. Like I say, it's worth playing, if only for the promise of, a better sequel. Although I'm sure a lot of people that grew up with Psychonauts would say to the contrary, just like, they did point out, and I think rightly so, that the, levitation ball is much less fun in Psychonauts 2. But that's like the only thing that's less fun in Psychonauts 2. And it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just that you can't do those like crazy tall boom jumps. It's much more reined in. But for the most part, like Psychonauts 2 just blows it away in every respect, in my opinion. I mean, it just really shows the advancement of DoubleFine as a developer, and I would say also, shows that Tim Schafer's still got it, so he's just as funny as he ever was. So it's a fantastic game. I would love to hear your thoughts when you play through it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, your praise of it, and generally a lot of people liked it. It was a lot of people's game of the year that it came out. Now that I have played Psychonauts 1, and even, with all the criticisms that we've had of Psychonauts 1, I see why this could be someone's favorite game of all time. Like, I get it.
I feel an endearment to it myself, as much as I don't necessarily want to play it ever again.
Yeah, exactly. So knowing that and then seeing what the praise for Psychonauts 2 is like, I'm definitely going to play it. It will be on the show, but I'll message you when I get around to playing that and let you know what I think too. Good chat here about Psychonauts. It's getting on to be a pretty long episode here, but it's a game that, it's got a lot to talk about, lot to discuss, a lot of creative ideas, successes and failures. So I appreciate you going on this odyssey with me.
Yeah. I again thank you for getting me to pull it off the shelf. Don't be afraid to ask again if you're like, hey, do you want to beat this game you've never beaten before? I love doing that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'll definitely have you back on the show sometime. This has been an awesome time. So thank you again. And for everybody who's still with us, one more call for all of you to check out My Life in Gaming on YouTube. Check out the Backloggery if you'd like some help organizing your backlog games. If you're here at 2 hours and 45 minutes or so, where we are in this episode, you probably need some backlog help. So try the Backloggery. And then, of course, King of Games 1999 on the Retro Hangover podcast. You'll hear Try and I both on that series as well. So thank you, everybody. If you're still here at the end, you are my hero. And tune in next week for the next game to come out of the backlog.
Do you have a gaming subscription service like Xbox Game Pass or a crazy backlog and don't know what to play next? Well, 1H1D might be for you. Join me, Chris, and my college buddy Tom as we play a random game or a requested game for an hour and decide if it's worth playing past that hour. We go over the good, the bad, and maybe some little tidbits about the development you might not have known. Got 30 minutes? Give us a try, and if you like it, throw us a 5-star review. Try something new. You never know what might be your next favorite game.
Hey.
Oh, hey, Jeff.
What's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman. We know. I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.